Was it really possible for one man to change the rhythm of the global music industry again? This question echoed in millions of minds as the calendar turned to June 2025. The silence was heavy, the anticipation palpable. Jungkook, the youngest member of BTS and its breakout soloist, had just completed his mandatory military service on June 11, 2025. Fans across continents weren't merely waiting for his return. They were bracing for a seismic shift. They just didn't know how fast it was coming. From the moment Jungkook stepped out of uniform and back into the limelight, there was an unspoken promise in the air. A promise that something bigger than anyone expected was brewing. The buzz wasn't manufactured, it was earned. For over a decade, Jungkook had grown from a wide-eyed teenager into an artist with unprecedented reach. His solo work prior to enlistment, like 7 and 3D, had already hinted that he was no longer just part of a group phenomenon. He was the phenomenon. Social media flared up instantly. Fan pages speculated. Streaming numbers from months ago were revisited. YouTube comments on his older videos flooded with emotional countdowns. Behind the curtain, Spotify's algorithm had already begun registering something unusual, a sudden spike in replays of Jungkook's past hits. The world was waiting, but Jungkook didn't utter a single word about what was coming. He didn't have to. Then came the whispers. Quiet at first. Posts by US radio interns. A TikTok sound leaking what sounded suspiciously like an unreleased remix. The clue? A lyric referencing a fire that burned even after time. ARMY knew better than to ignore it. They pieced together clips, matched vocal tones, cross-checked timing. Something was happening, and it was happening in the US. By June 15th, speculation had erupted into near certainty. The track? 7. Already a previous global hit, had a new mix coming. And not just any remix. It was tied to a special Spotify campaign, timed with Jungkook's military discharge. It wasn't just a celebration. It was a test. Could a post-military Jungkook break records he hadn't even set yet? June 16 arrived with a hush. At midnight EST, the song went live. And for the next 24 hours, the world couldn't look away. The numbers rolled in faster than anyone could process. Over 2 million filtered streams in the US alone in a single day, a number never before reached by any Asian solo act in Spotify's history. It wasn't just impressive. It was historic. Twitter exploded. Billboard editors posted cryptic emojis. TikTokers made videos saying, "Jungkook just broke America." The kicker? This wasn't even his newest song. This was a reminder, a resurrection, a warning. Jungkook's fans weren't just streaming. They were mobilizing, sharing links, translating lyrics, organizing replay parties that included playlists looping 7 for hours with specific timestamps to avoid Spotify's filtering algorithm. These weren't casual listeners. They were digital warriors fighting a streaming war. What made it more shocking was who Jungkook was up against. On the very same day, 3 Western pop giants released new tracks. But by 6 a.m., Jungkook had overtaken them all. Without paid promotion, without a music video, without a single public statement. Why? Because people weren't just listening, they were responding emotionally. This was more than a chart climb. It was a comeback of mythic proportions. One fan wrote on X, "We waited 19 months. And in 19 hours, he reminded the world who the real pop king is." The headlines were relentless. Jungkook breaks Spotify in the US. ARMY returns with a vengeance. Is Jungkook the future of pop? Even local newspapers in non-English speaking countries were running the story. CNN's entertainment section called it one of the most culturally significant solo returns in modern music history. But the biggest question wasn't the number.
It was, how?
How did a Korean artist, post-military, with no promotion and no live performance, break the Spotify US single-day streaming record? That question hung in the air like a spark before ignition. And the answer would only get more shocking in the chapters to come. The world hadn't just witnessed a comeback, it had watched a revolution unfold in real time. Jungkook's 7 didn't merely top the US Spotify chart, it dominated it. With over 2 million filtered streams, it redefined what was possible for a Korean solo artist in an American market that had historically been resistant to non-English language domination. This wasn't about algorithms. This was about impact. And Jungkook, it seemed, had mastered both. By 8 a.m., Spotify servers were under unusual strain. Internal data teams scrambled to verify the stream counts, suspecting bots.
But it was no glitch.
This was organic, authentic, explosive. Every stream was a fan clicking in genuine awe. Billboard's backend began resorting its metrics, shocked by the velocity. Within hours, news outlets picked up on the tidal wave. The phrase "unprecedented record broken by Jungkook" began trending globally. But while casual readers were awed by the numbers, those who'd followed Jungkook's trajectory from the start knew this wasn't accidental. It was the result of years of silent groundwork. And a decade of trust built with fans. ARMY wasn't just a fan base. It was a movement. In the span of 12 hours, they turned Spotify into a battleground of pride, devotion, and strategy. Tutorials on how to avoid filter detection algorithms spread like wildfire. Playlists were meticulously timed to maximize replay value. Regional fan clubs coordinated global time zone efforts. This wasn't random streaming. It was precision warfare, but behind the raw strategy was emotion. A kind of triumphant vindication. Jungkook had served his country, disappeared from public view, and returned with a quiet promise, only to shatter industry ceilings days later. One tweet that went viral read, "They said K-pop was a phase. Jungkook just made it history." And while the song itself had already proven its viral capability when it first dropped, this second wind was different. It wasn't just about catchy lyrics or star features. It was about legacy, about reclaiming space, about an artist not only surviving the rigid expectations of fame and duty, but transcending them. Executives at US radio stations reportedly began revisiting their July rotation lists. Suddenly, 7 was back in heavy rotation, even on networks that had once hesitated to feature Korean artists in peak hours. Analysts from music data firms noted a rare trend. Not only were Gen Z listeners engaging, but so were Gen X and Boomers, particularly in multicultural markets. Meanwhile, Spotify's Discover Weekly algorithm adapted. Users who had never streamed BTS or Jungkook before were now receiving 7 on their curated playlists, fueled purely by engagement metrics. That's the kind of exposure money can't buy. And Jungkook got it with no label stunt, no influencer promo, and no public press. His silence became the loudest statement. He had said nothing, but he had done everything. By day's end, over 40 major outlets had published features on Jungkook's record. Variety called it the most organic viral resurgence of 2025. Time magazine labeled him a generational talent who's rewriting the global rules. But perhaps the most heartfelt reaction came from fans themselves, thousands of whom uploaded reaction videos.
Tears.
Screams. Disbelief.
Pride.
One popular creator captioned her reaction, "I watched history happen from my bedroom." But beneath the celebrations, a question was rising. What's next? Was this just a glorious return, or the beginning of Jungkook's true solo era? The answer, hidden behind unspoken plans and unreleased projects, would unfold as the ripple effects of June 16th continued to shape global music in ways no one, not even Jungkook himself, could fully anticipate. The 2 million stream breakthrough was only the beginning. Just days after the Spotify record, another shockwave hit the music world. Jungkook officially became the fastest Asian soloist in history to reach 9 billion streams on Spotify. The timeline? A jaw-dropping 1,218 days. Fans didn't need to be told what that meant, they felt it. It wasn't just a number. It was a reflection of unwavering loyalty, global demand, and artistic excellence that hadn't faltered for a single day. What astonished the industry was the pace. Even globally dominant acts like BTS, Blackpink, and Twice hadn't reached that number so quickly as individuals. Jungkook had set a precedent. He wasn't simply riding the legacy of BTS, he was expanding it. And the most telling fact? The lion's share of his streams came from songs he released solo, not as part of the group. That sent a very clear message. Jungkook was now a fully formed, standalone global powerhouse. 7 wasn't done making history either. The song crossed 2.4 billion total streams, a milestone most artists could only dream of. And in a stunning testament to its staying power, it had remained on Spotify's global chart for over 700 consecutive days, a record in itself. How does a song stay relevant for nearly 2 years in an industry driven by fleeting virality? The answer: timeless appeal, emotional resonance, and an artist whose presence amplifies every note. As the news spread, the ARMY's online celebrations turned into a global event. Hashtags trended in over 40 countries. Billboard's Instagram shared a tribute post. Music critics across cultures marveled at the consistency. It wasn't a lucky moment. It was the sustained, strategic growth of an artist who had long outgrown the term idol. But for Jungkook, these numbers weren't trophies. They were testimony. Testimony that the world had not just waited for him during his military hiatus, but carried him. Fans shared personal stories of how they'd looped 7 during difficult times, how his voice had become the sound of healing. And Jungkook? He said nothing. Not a tweet. Not a live stream. Just his stats doing the talking. That silence, again, became louder than applause. What made this even more special was the way fans reacted. Not as though this was expected, but as though it was a miracle every time. People uploaded videos of themselves crying, shaking, hugging each other in cafes after reading the Spotify updates. One girl in Mexico went viral for screaming 9 billion Mireille while holding up a homemade Jungkook poster in the middle of her school. The love wasn't manufactured, it was lived. Critics began comparing Jungkook's solo numbers to industry titans like Harry Styles and Justin Bieber, and even noted how his streaming speed rivaled some of Taylor Swift's older record runs. But this wasn't about comparison. It was about representation. An Asian male soloist dominating Western streaming charts without compromising language, style, or identity. That wasn't just rare. It was historic. Music analysts began to dissect the mechanics behind Jungkook's explosive solo presence. What was it about his songs that stuck? Was it the bilingual lyrics? The precision of his vocal delivery? The universal themes of love, longing, confidence, and vulnerability? Or perhaps it was the paradox that made him irresistible, a megastar who still felt accessible, raw, and real. Whatever the formula, it was working. Spotify executives reportedly reached out to Jungkook's team to discuss future campaigns, possibly highlighting him as one of their global streaming icons. The conversation had shifted from can he succeed alone to how far can he go now that he's back, and the answer, by all appearances, was further than anyone could imagine. Fans began speculating about an upcoming world tour. Could these numbers be building to something bigger? Was this viral momentum a teaser for a surprise album drop? ARMY accounts began decoding every Instagram post, every emoji from big hit staff, every frame from old behind-the-scenes videos for clues. But while theories bloomed, one truth remained. Jungkook had broken through every ceiling, and the ceiling itself was gone. He had become not just the most streamed Korean soloist, but a symbol of something greater. A global artist whose presence united fans across languages, borders, and generations. For now, though, the moment was his. 9 billion streams. 2.4 billion on a single track. 700 days on the global chart. These weren't just numbers, they were history. Etched into the timeline of music forever. And yet, the most stunning part? It still felt like the beginning. How does an artist from Busan, South Korea, not only top the charts in America, but redefine the strategy for crossing over into the Western market without losing identity? For Jungkook, the answer was never about conforming. It was about precision, instinct, and intent. His rise wasn't accidental. It was designed. And every choice, every feature, every brand collaboration, every stylistic nuance played into what fans and critics are now calling the Western Playbook. When Jungkook collaborated with American rapper Latto on 7, it wasn't just to spice up a remix. It was a calculated bridge, linking cultures, tapping into the sonic rhythm of the Western market while staying rooted in his own vocal identity. Latto brought grit, Jungkook brought silk, and together they delivered a bilingual hit that didn't feel forced. It felt natural, organic, and it cracked doors that had previously only been nudged open. But it didn't stop there. Not long after, Jungkook dropped 3D, this time with Jack Harlow, another American name with mainstream recognition. The beat was unmistakably Western, almost retro pop in flavor, but Jungkook's voice wrapped around it with modern flair. Harlow's verse brought edge, but it was Jungkook's subtle charisma that made the song linger. The lyrics weren't trying to impress, they were trying to connect. And they did. Interestingly, industry insiders later revealed that 7 had originally been pitched to Justin Bieber, but it landed in Jungkook's hands instead, through a twist of fate, or perhaps destiny. Bieber's team, including Scooter Braun, reportedly shifted interest to Jungkook after recognizing his potential to dominate globally. And dominate, he did. It wasn't just collaborations that expanded his Western footprint. Jungkook's branding choices told their own story. His ambassadorship with Calvin Klein wasn't random. The minimalist, high-fashion aesthetic aligned perfectly with his own persona, mature, sensual, clean, and mysterious. His campaigns didn't just go viral. They saturated every corner of fashion TikTok and Gen Z Twitter. Suddenly, he wasn't just a musician. He was a cultural force. Then came the performances. When Jungkook appeared on the Global Citizen Festival stage in New York, fans screamed not just out of excitement, but disbelief. He was performing live in America as a soloist, filling the air with charisma that once belonged to stadiums shared with 6 others. The crowd knew every word. The cameras captured something undeniable, an artist stepping into his power. Critics marveled at the ease of his transition. So many international acts struggle to make a dent in the American market. Language barriers, cultural misalignments, or marketing gaps tend to limit impact. But Jungkook's approach wasn't about bending to fit. It was about choosing when and how to engage. His songs didn't switch language unnecessarily. His visuals stayed authentic. And most importantly, his attitude remained unfiltered. In a now viral clip, a Rolling Stone editor was caught on a hot mic saying, "He doesn't need to do anything gimmicky. He just shows up and the market adjusts to him." That may sound dramatic, but the numbers supported it. His Spotify milestones became case studies. Music executives began dissecting his campaigns. One entertainment strategist noted, "Jungkook has created a blueprint for non-Western artists. Not how to mimic the West, but how to meet the West on your own terms." Meanwhile, his music remained layered with meaning. In Standing Next to You, Jungkook's lyrics spoke of enduring presence, commitment, intimacy, emotions that translated across languages. In a digital world oversaturated with surface-level hits, his ability to blend sensuality and soul stood out. Each release felt like a love letter, not just to a partner, but to his fans. Western media took notice, not just of his success, but his grace. Vogue praised his duality. GQ highlighted his leadership in redefining masculinity. Time named him an artist of cultural fusion. And behind all the headlines and records was something deeply personal. Jungkook was building a legacy. Slowly, confidently, and without ever yelling for attention. He had become proof that global stardom doesn't require sacrifice. It requires conviction. As more American producers lined up to work with him and whispers of a full English-language album surfaced, one thing became clear. Jungkook had not only entered the Western arena, he had redesigned its architecture. The real magic? He made it look effortless. And fans? They're no longer asking if Jungkook can break into the West. They're watching him lead it,